that? And also, if I may, was there a push from the states and territories to relax the 10 Medicare subsidised rules under the existing mental health care plans?
Well, no, but I'll allow Christine to, because Christine joined us for today's conversation, but I would stress, particularly with the impact of the unemployment statistics we saw yesterday, we're very conscious that burden of unemployment is disproportionately affecting both women and younger people, and that is why it's so important we move quickly. I mean, one of the points Christine made today in response to issues that were raised is that the more we're able to reopen the economy, that's also good for the mental health of young people, to provide that hope and that opportunity and to provide some certainty in what is otherwise a very difficult situation. Christine?
Yes, thank you, Prime Minister. And really good question, because we do need to be very careful. So within the constraints of saying that I think any conversation about our suicide risk for any Australian needs to be very carefully managed as we go through, because we want to actually concentrate on what can we do to ensure it doesn't happen. So was it an issue? Absolutely, it's an issue. It's an issue every conversation that I and others have when it comes to looking at the mental health and wellbeing of Australians as we go through COVID-19. So it is of great concern. But as I say, the issue is very much about saying, how do we stay ahead? How do we try and ensure that those connections are there? How can we try and ensure that we reach people? Now, Reach Out we've looked at their figures, because they are a place where young people go, and particularly for rural, regional, remote areas where they need to access services which they can't do face-to-face, and a young person is looking for something. There's been over a 50% increase in young people accessing Reach Out's services and looking at what's there. So we know that young people are concerned, we know that this is impacting on them, and we know the risks. We do know the risks. But our challenge is to make sure that we have open access for them to look for help, that, as the Minister has said, the fact we will have a comms campaign which will really seek to normalise help-seeking behaviour. That's something we've really got to get to, and then we make sure that we connect with them. All of those are really critical.
Question?
No, I said no.
Increasing Medicare.
Prime Minister on Wednesday. Prime Minister.
Just following on from Jen's question regarding the President of America threatening to pull the manufacturing work out of Australia, is that any different to what China is doing in regards to the agricultural sector? And secondly, Premier Mark McGowan has said he'd be happy to pick up the phone and call some of his good relations in China to help smooth over the relationship between Australia and China. Have you taken him up on that, and are you planning to?
Look, on the first issue, we have our contracts and our arrangements in place as suppliers into the programs, and we will continue to pursue those contracts as they've been set out. And so I would caution against getting too far ahead of oneself when it comes to reading into the statements that have been made. When it comes to our relationship with China, it is built on mutual benefit. And we have a comprehensive strategic partnership which we've formed. And within that partnership, there are issues that need to be addressed from time to time, and the issues around beef and barley are those matters, and they've been, particularly on the barley issue, been running for some time. And we always welcome the involvement of all those who are directly involved in these sectors, and I have no doubt that Premier McGowan would pursue that as he sees appropriate. And I've always been aware of those arrangements, and premiers can always take those steps. But as far as the Commonwealth Government is doing, we're doing that through the channels that we have available. But I'd stress again that what the Australian Government is doing is completely unremarkable. We are standing our ground on our values and the things that we know are always important. I'm not aware if there are things that Australia has decisions that we've taken in our national interest, then they are regularly raised in the discussions that I have with Chinese leaders. Particularly Premier Li Keqiang, who I've had several meetings with, and even when I've engaged with President Xi. And we'll continue to do that in good faith. And we'll do that, though, always standing by the values and the positions that we have consistently held. One of the most important things about our approach to the relationship is we're always consistent. We're always consistent. We draw very clear lines about things that are very important to us, as does the Chinese government. And we respect their lines as we expect our lines to be respected, whether it's on our foreign investment rules or our rules around technology, our rules regarding human rights and things of that nature. I don't think any Australian would want us to compromise on those important things, and those things are not to be traded ever. Now, our government is very clear about these things, and we will always continue to be clear, and these are not things to be traded.
You've got 7.6 million people in Australia right now being effectively paid by the government through the Job Seeker and the Job Keeper program. This morning, your Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton says that if the government can help more people through the Job Keeper program, it will. Given you've said that you don't want to extend the parameters for the eligibility, are you now considering extending it beyond September? And can I ask you, just on China, in relation to what you mentioned before, do you endorse George Christensen writing a letter to the ambassador of China asking him to appear before a parliamentary committee?
Well, I don't involve myself in the activities of parliamentary committees. They are sovereign in their own right, and they conduct their own activities. It would be very inappropriate for me to do so, and I wouldn't, nor would I pass commentary on it. In relation to the other matter, though, that you've raised, and you just might want to remind me again. Yeah, well, what Peter's talking about is exactly the response I gave before. This is a demand-driven program. Now, we estimated some 6 million Australians would be supported by this program. It is now actually over 6.1. In fact, the figures I have